And hello, my name is Matt Workman, and welcome to Cinematography Database Show. Today we're going to be talking about the cinematography of Hateful Eight, directed by Quentin Tarantino, shot by Bob Richardson. Quentin and Bob have collaborated on many of their amazing films together, or Quentin's amazing films, and including like Kill Bill, Django, and Hateful. So they have a really long relationship, and I think you kind of see that maturity in the filming that they do. They're able to make kind of wild and bold decisions that they're not things that like I would probably suggest to the director that I've only been working with for like a year or just met the first time on a commercial. These guys, they're probably like, well, what if I did something absolutely crazy? He's like, what if you did it crazier? I feel like that's what their conversations probably sound like. And you end up with movies like Hateful Eight. So let's hop right into this today. Here is Bob. He operates the camera himself. Bob Richardson. And this is one of his signature things that makes him pretty unique as a DP, is that he likes to ride and operate on an old school riding crane. And this crane is made by Grip Factory Munich, I believe. And this is the GF8, which is the smaller one. And he uses the GF16, which we're going to be talking about in depth quite a bit coming up. You can see that as opposed to having a remote head, he is physically at the end of the crane. So it's a little bit intense for the grip team to have the head of the department flying, 20 feet in the air. But you do get a certain sense of inertia and movement while you're at the end of the crane. And I'm sure that informs the operating. And it's the way he likes to work. And not going to take that away from him. Does a great job going so far. So here's our slate picture. I thought this was pretty funny. They use a gigantic slate outside, and they went fully old school, so it's like literally chalk. I'm sure the assistant editor who had to like read these was really appreciative of these chalk drawings. And here's Tarantino and Cam Richardson. Maybe this is like the actual slate from like Ben-Hur or something like that. I'm not sure exactly. So the first thing we're going to talk about is to look at some of the exteriors. So let's look at the horizon here. I feel like horizon's around here, kind of low. In the beginning of the movie, now there's going to be spoilers in this because we're going to break down things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. We start with this, pretty much start with a close-up of what would be, I would assume, Jesus here on the cross. And it basically takes about 2 or 3 minutes for them to pull back out to this wide shot. And we see this stagecoach kind of tearing through the perspective. And he's kind of coming through this, the scene here. What I want to call out here is that the exteriors that they went for have this kind of blue color. So this is definitely the Hateful Eight exterior blue color correct. Likely when they were shooting this, though, the sky was like that. And probably this was probably like that. So that's the color correctors to shift it into there. Kind of a cool look for the whole thing. It takes what would be pure white. Like, look at this horse. What would have been pure white and just gives the whole thing a tone. And that's a strong technique for cinematographers to understand that when you have a scene that's all white, you're like, oh, I'm the worst, I'm blowing everything out. That in color correction, you can actually control that tone and give it, not only bring the value down, but give it an actual color. Sometimes that's yellow, sometimes it's orange, sometimes it's this interesting blue. It's a cool look. I haven't seen something like this for a while. I think it's pretty awesome. Here is a shot where I'm going to go to white, where we're getting introduced to some of the characters, and we see this little dark silhouette. And I've said it in other episodes, but we're going to talk about it more and more, and I'm actually starting to put together either a course or a book or something that kind of breaks this into more detail. But he is a little silhouette, and even from that way, way back distance on a little screen, we are very attuned to finding silhouettes and understanding what they are, assuming that they're human. You can tell how old they are. You can kind of guess. You can tell if it's male or female. There's a lot that humans can tell from the silhouettes of other humans. They're playing against this. The horizon, I feel like, is around here. And he is completely surrounded by white snow. So his silhouette sticks out very much. We have a lot of interesting perspective here. This tree here, of course, is holding down that as well. And we do have a bit of atmospheric perspective where this tree is more contrasty than this. And this is even less contrasty in the back. Moving on, this is a cool scene where the camera is essentially booming down to reveal Samuel L. Jackson. I forget his name, Major something, right? I forget his name. So what happens is when the camera booms down is they basically Samuel L. Jackson kind of comes up from the bottom of the frame. So that's what's happening here. That's the storytelling device, is that we start on a shot that's essentially of just the stagecoach, and as the camera pans down, we're going to reveal Samuel L. Jackson at the bottom. Same kind of blue color correct going on, though I think it's calmed down a tiny bit because we have more skin tones now. So the highlights are like this, and we're looking at the shadows are here. So there's still a pretty heavy tinting of the background white, because this would otherwise just be white. But then if we look at his eyes, that's a dark color for eyes, I'm sure. But it's even the eyes, the white part of the eyes, and here in the hat, everything is tinted blue. So there really is no empirical white in this scene, but it is it does still feel white, but it does give the whole thing some tone, which just makes the thing feel more cinematic, more painterly, because pure white is can be kind of a strong and obviously a bright color, and it can just be a little bit off-putting used in the wrong way. It's a little bit intense to look at the whole time, so giving it a tone here kind of helps bring the focus back to Samuel Jackson and what's going on, than to having like pure white cyc, which is easily happens if you're shooting digital in a snowy environment, is to have everything just be pure white behind you. So a lot of that's going to be helped in color correct. Here's a cool overhead shot. Now this is, I'm realizing watching Quentin Tarantino's movie, it's been a while since I've watched some, how much of an influence I think he's had over my generation of filmmakers, because I feel like it's our instinct at almost all points in time is like, should we go for the overhead shot? I feel like all directors and TVs have this question. It's like, okay, I feel like we should probably get the jib just so we can do the overhead shot. I don't know if it's going to make the edit, but I feel like we need to get an overhead shot. I feel like Quentin Tarantino is kind of behind that. All the Kill Bill scenes from above and that sort of thing. And now watching this movie again, this framing sensibility and even this focal length from this height, I'm starting to realize that I've kind of adopted that from Quentin Tarantino. This is a cool shot, and what I wanted to show about it is that if you are low budget and you have no lights and you have none of that, it's like you don't need lights, you don't need money. You need to know how to do this kind of lighting and this type of framing. So what is it? We have over here a very bright scene that is backlighting this interior. And instead of trying to light up, or you're like, oh, we need to balance the exposure, don't balance the exposure. Roger Deakins doesn't balance the exposure of the interiors, and neither does Bob Richardson in this scene. What is very strong when you're shooting an exterior from an interior for a scene like this, where it's a wide shot, or maybe not even a wide shot, just close up, expose for the background. Always expose for the brightest thing and see what you can hold in the shadows, and just make sure that you're putting against this scene here something dark, like this silhouette. I don't know how to call it the silhouette because it's so dark, but make sure that this silhouette is holding. I feel like you could use like a little edge light here, not that he needs that, but like if you were trying to do something like this, if you're doing scenes like this, point back towards the bright scene, expose down so that that's being controlled, and then silhouette things in front of it and let the scene just be backlit towards camera. That's always going to work. If you kind of look at what's going on in this shot, this webcam shot, that's also what's kind of happening here. I kind of designed that. Let's move on to the crane. So right now, we're going to start looking at what Bob Richardson uses on pretty much all of his movies. And there's a couple really cool shots in Kill Bill. There's a couple in Django. And there's several in this one. And he does it all from this riding crane. And again, this is made by Grip Factory in Munich. I should probably go to the website. And essentially at some of its shorter lengths, you could have two people on the end of this crane. One would be the operator. The other would be the focus puller. There's a bunch of lengths. I think there's 15. At some of the longer lengths, you can only have one operator, so just the camera operator. And at the absolute longest lengths, I believe you have to take that off, the seat off, and you can only use a remote head because it starts to get really long. I am going to be building all of the GF 16, 8, and 9 cranes in 3D with the little seats at the end so that people will be able to visualize what that looks like, what angles are possible, and how the camera moves look. And we're going to be also looking here at some stuff that Bob was doing with it. What's really cool about this scene, besides this, and I'm going to keep calling this out, is if you listen to the behind the scenes, the snow is like super loud, or something is really loud here. And filming in the elements, just like The Revenant, it's pretty hardcore. Actually, look at this guy. He is, oh man, I'm just noticing this now. It's like sad it's cold out. But what is cool, and we're going to keep pointing this out, this is like the funniest part that I've seen all day, is that we have this combo stand-up here with a 4.5-inch grip head, and we have this awesome-looking umbrella that goes over the camera. So it's like a junior to this arm with an umbrella over it, and they fly that over the camera at all times. I think that is next level gripping right there. And so that's our first look at this crane. Moving on, here's a cool shot of Quentin Tarantino. This looks pretty real, where he's clearly blocking an over the shoulder, maybe explaining the shot to Samuel Jackson. And this scarf is badass. When's the last time you saw a scarf on someone and it was like, that's badass? In Western movies, which this is kind of a Western frontier movie. It's just set in the snow, which is kind of interesting. And we just see Bob Richardson all the way down here on his GF16 crane, sitting on it, and you see he's got a microphone. So he's able to say like, okay, boom up, slow down, let's boom up a little bit higher. Okay, and hold it right there. And then on my call, we're going to back up in 3, 2, 1 and start dollying back. So he can do stuff like that almost live and talk really quietly, probably without getting recorded by the sound artist. And he can basically just float around in the world like wherever he wants, like he's on a magic carpet, except it's a magic grip factory Munich carpet. And this also, to call out, this is the first AC right here. And how do I know that? I will tell you at the end. You'll see. So here's a shot, like I said, the beginning of the movie. If you were interested, this is it. This is them filming it. Statue. We see like a M90, maybe something like that, like somewhat big HMI, just kind of hitting it hard, filling in. This frame here is to protect it from the snow, and we see him, Rob Richardson, starting really close, and then this crane kind of just slowly backs up, and I can imagine he's actually like talking live to his people. He's like, okay, slow it down. And in 5 seconds, we're going to go back, and I'm panning left. Okay, boom, the arm back, stuff like that. It's cool to do that. And if you come from a live camera operating background, you'll be used to even if you have like 30 cameras, there's someone usually watching all the cameras, and they're like, okay, camera A, we're going to you in 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Can you zoom it out? Communicating camera moves in a live situation, you better know what pan means, what tilt means, what zoom means, what boom means. Like, you guys have to have this common language to talk to 20 camera operators and be able to live get what you want. Throw in their techno cranes, jibs, and steady cams. You have to really know what your language is for cinematography. And these guys operate at that level, of course. And this is my favorite picture. This is like what I use for the cover art. It's just a really cool shot. This is the GF8, which I didn't realize the GF8 could hold a person because it's kind of a skinny beam compared to the GF16. But I guess they use different ones. I'd have to talk to like a legit European grip about when you use certain models of cranes. Maybe there's some on the YouTube channel. You guys tell me, when do you use the 8? When do you use the 16? I feel like you would just always use the 16. I don't know. But yeah, so that's the look at the crane. And next, we're going to look at some day exterior stuff as far as the lighting. And all I wanted to call out here is I'm going to pick kind of like a bright color. Is that, look at this. Who made this? Who made this umbrella to junior adapter? Genius. I honestly hope to never have to need that on shoots because I don't like shooting outside. But this is a great look at the Ultra Panavision 70 camera that they shot with. We'll talk a lot about the specific film camera they used and some of the like... already I feel like it's a nostalgia of what they did to shoot this. It's pretty cool. And again, like I said, with Quentin Tarantino, I feel like they're just trying to one up each other on something that's like creative and kind of like crazy. He's like, what if we did 2 crazy? Quentin Tarantino's like, no, man, 4 crazy. And then Bob Richardson goes to like Panavision. He's like, what about Ultra 70 crazy? And that's what they do. And they make a movie and we all have fun watching it on the road show. So what I want to show here is this bounce. What we have is, this is called I'm going to write it out real quick. It's made by K5600, and it's called the Alpha. Now I'm forgetting the name. I believe it's called the Alpha 18. I forget. Sorry, I guess. It's an 18K essentially, and it's this very kind of like spotlight mole beam looking one, and it has a very, very wide throw. So it shoots a very like open face kind of 18K kind of light versus a Fresnel, which is a little more focused. The beam's a little bit like this. A beam like of a Fresnel is like that, and a par. The beam coming out of that light's like this. It's like, poof, like just hits everything, kind of like a sky pan. It's made by K5600, who make the Jokers. And they're also just like these kind of small, lightweight lights, and they get to the ground pretty easily. And he's using it to bounce into likely a 12 by 12 ultra bounce, and that's creating a big fill light over the daylight. And we're going to look at a couple more photos of that. Just wanted to point that out. And this dolly, which I am actively doing my research on to start modeling in 3D, is the Leonard Chapman Hustler. Or is that the Pee-wee? I can't tell if it's the Hustler or the Pee-wee, but it's the Chapman. I know that much. Here's another look at the same HMI. Pretty sure it's the Alpha 18, the 18K version. And again, bouncing into some big ultra bounce here. And you can imagine that there's this even flat light over the scene. And then especially with the hat here, the hat's going to block a lot of light. So he's going to essentially be like completely dark. They're filling in from here and here and here, so light gets under there, and it's also very even and flat. So even if it shows up in the eye light, because it's so big, it's going to probably be matching essentially the quality of light that's around the scene. It'll feel natural, and I feel like the exterior lighting is very natural. The interior lighting, we're going to talk a lot about that. Here's a cool shot of Bob operating. looks like a cold day. They consistently have this like canvas cover over the camera. Because film cameras are pretty robust, I feel like, compared to digital cameras. But, there's probably not a ton of these 70mm cameras. You got to keep them pretty in good condition. And this is just more shooting of the Stagecoach. And I just like how there's such a variety of dollies and the riding crane. But sometimes you just like put the tripod in the snow, pointed at the Stagecoach. And I don't think that seems obvious to people, but to me, I have an appreciation of just like a camera in the snow looking into a Stagecoach. I feel like that's pretty cool. I don't know why. It just feels like kind of like simple. There's something simple about a camera and a tripod, and I deal with a lot of ways of moving the camera, like dollies and cranes and Moko and stuff like that. But like sometimes you got to hold it down on the tripod. So now we're going to talk about Bob Richardson Lighting, and this is something that I've slowly started to understand more and more. I've actually had people tell me that some of the music videos I used to shoot look like this, and I didn't really know what that meant back then because I was in the music video world. I wasn't like really looking at movies in an analytical way. But what I'm going to call this next section, and I might as well just draw it here, we're going to call it, okay, that's drawing with black. That doesn't work, I guess. We're going to call it, look at this lettering, hot. We're going to go hot backlight with a low low bounce. Hot backlight, low bounce. I was also going to call this hot backlight and F it, but I feel like I want to keep this cooler, more like friendly for everybody, but we could also call this hot backlight and F it. I feel like that's kind of also would be accurate. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete this real quick, but that's the name of this section. And this is kind of my analysis of the lighting of the movie. This particular movie and Bob Richardson in general. He's kind of known for this. So what we see here is would be like a par can. Par cans are kind of one of the things he uses quite a bit. So picture a backlight coming from here. You can see it doing this rim light on the hat clearly. We see it here, and it's probably 2 stops over, and on film, that's going to still be okay. On Alexa, that's going to be okay. On Blackmagic 4.6K Mini Ursa Mini, from what I'm hearing, 2 stops, you got it. So you could backlight with exposed by 2 stops, and then we essentially just say, hey, let's just let it go, and we're going to see what happens. No front fill. But what ends up happening is because this stuff is coming and blowing up this piano keys and all this other stuff, is we get this low bounce. So here's the hot backlight. Not that that's how light bounces, but we have light bouncing around, and eventually it gets back to him. And on film and on certain cameras, you can actually hold the underexposure and the overexposure at the same time, which is probably why he's not so excited about shooting digital, where you may not be able to do that technique as naturally. You might have to fake the low bounce. So again, hot backlight, low bounce. You're going to start to see this in all of the Quentin Tarantino movies that Bob shot. Another scene doing the same thing. Hot backlight, almost a hot top light. And then clearly this is hitting a table that's down here and going like this. Boom, 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 the backlight, or the uplight. Here's another thing going on. This one feels a little bit faked, but in general, it's like there's the hot top light. Other stuff happening too. But essentially, I think this might be like a candle. It feels like a candle or something like that. But you can imagine that like all over the room, here's a table. There's these hot backlights hitting tables, and those tables are uplighting people. Roger Deakins actually does a similar thing when he's recreating daylight coming through a room and bouncing into the floor. That seems to be the way that people are doing it these days. So if you're shooting a narrative project and you feel like getting some hot backlight low bounce, give it a shot. Roger Deakins does it. Bob Richardson does it. Why don't you do it? Here's another shot, clearly a big hot spot coming down here like this, and just letting it bounce back up and go crazy, do what it do. Like this, again, hot spot bouncing everywhere. That's kind of how it's working. And you have to be cautious of balancing how hot this is and how much you're actually getting in there, because it could just be like blown out backlight and no front fill, which would be, I don't know if that would be as engaging to look at. So here's some of the proof actually. So if you look at this scene as they're blocking, a lot of things going on in a movie set. Like you feel like the props department resetting something. You're doing Samuel L. Jackson's makeup over here. You're talking to the director. And of course, Bob Richardson over here with the long gray hair, which I'm looking forward 100% to having long gray wizard cinematographer hair. It'll get there. Will I still be making these YouTube videos then? I don't know. I hope so. But we have clearly our main hard backlight. I would assume the camera angle is going to be from here. based on how everyone's looking, the way that things are being staged. I would assume the angle's this way. And we clearly have this backlight hitting everybody, and it's hitting the floor, and it's uplighting you. It's even uplighting him, but he's getting a little bit of direct as well. And what is Bob Richardson doing here? We want to focus it on this deal, light meters. I know people who are new to cinematography always ask about light meters. I haven't quite gotten down to my opinion on it, but what he's calculating is this to that. He's making sure that this exposure that's coming from the table, which is basically his face, is at exposure. I would assume that he is going to say that this is like, say he gets a reading that's like this. T56, Bob. Thank you for using me. I'm glad someone still uses a light meter. That's what the light meter said to him. And I bet he puts the camera at, so he would expose it. I would assume that he would put the lens at around T56, and he might put it to like a 456 just to make it a little bit brighter here, and then just make sure that we're a little bit at exposure and bring the skin up a little bit higher, but still make sure that these highlights are still only 2 or 3 stops over. I mean, they're shooting film, so it's not as much of an issue, but actually the digital cameras are all being rated towards highlights too. But that's what's going on in this scene. I know there's a lot to look at, but I think this should help solidify the fact that, yes, that is what's going on in a lot of these scenes. It's a hot backlight, but he wants to make sure that the bounce light that's coming up is going to be enough to get exposure. And that's what we're looking at. And that's what he's doing. And same thing here. Presumably, you see what he's looking at? Do you know what the DP looks at when he's doing a reading like this? He's looking at the camera. That's what he's looking at. So there's a camera way over here, somewhere else, with a lens looking at him. Here's our camera with our big Panavision mag on it. And this is a terrible drawing. He's looking at that and making sure, because there's going to be a person getting their close-up here, probably him. It's probably this guy who's getting his hat cleaned off, ready for his close-up, and he's backlighting him. You see how hot this hair is. I don't know if this is a production still or a video, but you see how overexposed it is. And what he's doing is he's making sure that the fill light that's coming back and hitting this meter that's going to go back to the camera, he's making sure that that's at the exposure level that he wants. And look at this ball. Look at that, it's brighter at the bottom than it is at the top. That's what's going on in a lot of these interiors. So that's a look at Bob Richardson's lighting style for this movie and for, a lot of the stuff that he does. And I think it's a technique that you should try. Try just giving it a big hard backlight and just see what comes back naturally and expose to that natural comeback bounce. Let it just blow out. Don't worry about it blowing out unless it's like a commercial for a big client. Don't do that. But and just see what it looks like. You can do it in your house with your iPhone, honestly. You can do it in anything. But it's the concept of understanding hard backlight. Whatever comes back at you at the bounce, expose for that, and just let it go. Let it ride. That's how we're doing it. The last thing I want to do is, not the last thing, but the last thing I'm going to do in this section is just kind of look at some of the lighting in the interior. So we clearly have, where are we? So see like this hot spot here, and even this I kind of question what that is. But there's clearly a spotlight hitting that. And then there's a little spotlight over there. You kind of see it's coming like that. And there's probably, this feels a little bit weird. Maybe it feels supposed to be a window. But essentially we have these spotlights, and in this shot, they're pretty neutral, but then we have this blue cooler light coming through here. Now this is shot on a stage, I believe. I'm gonna make this actually blue. We have blue window light. So yeah, I don't know, but like what's gonna be engaging about this are these hot spots that are coming down, and the fact that there's these doors and windows that are very bright and have a little bit of color contrast. So the interior lighting is warm, the exterior lighting is blue. It's cooler. And these to me count as practicals. When you have a window like this, when I say like the 5 elements of cinematography that are engaging, almost on an unconscious level, subconscious level that you can't control liking, when I say practicals, I also mean windows. Because when you see a window, that window becomes the light source in your head. Like my window back there. It feels like a light source. So that's what's going on in this shot. Here's some more of it. So here's a little bit more of the fire. This fire is not even that orange, honestly. Pretty bright. Here's our fire color. It's a little bit green. Maybe this is just like a bad still that I pulled the color from. I think this blue thing is a lens flare, which we'll talk about the lens flares from these lights. And then clearly over here is like this full blue situation. This probably went full blown out in the actual negative. I bet you that was blown out. And then they just color corrected it tonally back into this zone. So it probably came in looking like this. The window was probably bright white like that. And then they colored it back into this. So they made an isolation window for it. Likely, I would guess in color correction here, what I might be wrong. They used a qualifier, or there's some sort of like separation happening here where they're like, okay, this is going to get real blue. And then we're going to make sure that these highlights don't fully clip. Same with these. So you kind of look at this table that was probably blown out. It's getting the same kind of color correction. But then over in this world, it's kind of like a different situation where we look at the blacks. And the black's pretty black. Let's see if I think the blacks are still warmer. So over here we have the blacks are blue. Where can I show this? I'm struggling to pull like a nice swatch for you. That's a dark blue if you can't tell. But over here, magically, the darks are going to be, or the blacks are going to be warm. So how are we doing that? We're doing two separate color corrects to this frame. This side of the frame is going to be blue with blue in the darks and the blacks. And this side's warm, clearly with the fire. So there's a bit of color correction magic going on here to make this happen, because you can't have two different, I guess you kind of could if you had a warm light and a blue light, but in general, I think that this was probably either helped in a combination with lighting and color correction to make that happen. And that's my analysis of this frame. Here's just another look, and I've started to do this on some of my commercials with daylight, and this is kind of like a Roger Deakins jam going on too, is that like right here, this is presumably like a window's over there, like behind his head, and it's like, bam, well, bam, like hitting him with light like this. Now, this is a snowstorm, so I don't know where this hard light's coming from. Maybe it's supposed to be a lamp. But this guy's basically getting lit by Samuel Jackson's beard. So that's next level. If I ever have Samuel Jackson on set, I am definitely going to be lighting people with his beard, because that's what's going on here. Here comes the hard light hitting him, and it bounces back. That's what's going on. It's pretty neat. It does seem like if I look at this little rim light on his nose and this eye here, it's a little bit cleaned up. There probably is a nice, clean, low exposure, smooth beauty light going on, but I think there is a bit of bounce coming here. This diagram, if you didn't hear me talk about it, would be worthless to you. Let's move on. Today, I think we're going to skip the tea break. We're just going to do just go right through this. I'm trying to shorten these up a little bit. One for me to edit and one for you guys to watch, so you don't have to like stay here for so long. We're going to look at some of the actual behind the scenes of the lighting of these scenes. Did we look at the low bounce? Yeah, so we looked at that scene of this close-up where he's being uplit, and this is kind of a look at that. And I can't see everything, and for the people that are like, oh, like, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just like making it up and guessing and presenting it as a fact, I'm like, yeah, I admit that is exactly what I'm doing. I wasn't there. I didn't get to talk to the gaffer. I'm just doing I'm applying what I think, what I know about cinematography and what I've learned from being on set and analyzing a lot of cinematography, and I am guessing, and this is my interpretation of it. You know, when I talk about the color correction, the framing, and what I think it means, it's just that. It's what I think it means. And this is also what I think they're doing with the lighting. This isn't an interview with him, with Bob, so this is my interpretation of it, guys, okay? So, like, if you don't believe me, that's cool. You tell me in the comments what you think it is. If this is challenging you to think because you don't think I know what I'm talking about, I'm happy about that. That's cool. I'm all about that. So up here is a par can. What if it wasn't a par can? And it's coming down hard. I should probably switch to, like, a warmer color. And it's shooting down this hard light. His hat's going to keep it off his face, and then this lighting is all about the return light back at him. What I wanted to call out here, which I thought was kind of funny, is that all the blood spots on this 12 by 12, which looks to be like a light grid. What if it's a quarter grid? Look at all the blood on this thing, man. Like this, someone's getting this, Panavision's getting this 12 by back, and they're like, so this is the 12 by from the Quentin Tarantino shoot, huh? Okay. I guess I'm going to have Bob sign it and give it to my kids. I think that's what I would do with this bloody, and just like put it up over the mantle. Be like, that's the bloody 12 by from Hateful Eight, guys. And they signed it. That's the blood right there. They're like, I'm going to have nightmares for weeks now, Dad. So thank you. So here is the Panavision camera. Is this the 70mm? I guess that's the 70mm camera. It looks like a gigantic XL2. And this, I believe, is a Chapman Hustler. I don't know the Chapmans that well. I'm trying to get more familiar with them. I'm trying to learn all the accessories and that sort of thing, because I am actively modeling these in 3D, and I want the people who use Chapmans to have some nice 3D models too that work. And then maybe after I start using them in 3D, maybe I'll start to use them in real life too. Not sure. Just another shot of this. Kind of an interesting compound arm going on here compared to the Fisher dolly. I think this allows it to get the head lower easier. Interesting stuff going on. And I always find these behind-the-scenes stills kind of funny. We're not going to talk about the lighting so much. More that it's like all these guys are dressed up in these like period outfits. It's like this intense, like, you know, narrative-driven movie. And then there's, you know, the sound guy's wearing jeans and like a fleeced hoodie. And this dude's like super bored. He's like, "Oh, this take is taking so long." It's just funny because like when I watch this movie, I'm not like I don't love violent movies and scary movies. I feel like I was stressed out the entire movie. But when you look at the behind the scenes of it, it's just like extreme boredom, which kind of happens on a lot of movie sets. Another look at just like the tremendous amount of uplight. That looks like there's actually a source. There's no way that that's only just bounce light. But that's the idea, is that it's supposed to feel like the hot backlight with the return bounce, even if you have to help it out a little bit. We're looking into just some like kind of behind the scenes stuff now. Just like one of the bigger O'Connor heads. I think it's the 120X, which is for big cameras. And this pan arm I've never seen before, the red pan arm. So here's a little bit of look into the future. I'm actually going to be building Roger Deakins' go-to crane setup, which is an aero crane with a power pod. And I'm going to be building Bob Richardson's GF8, GF9, and GF16 cranes in 3D, and I'm going to be doing little breakdowns to show exactly how they do their camera moves, like everything, like how the dolly moves with the crane, how the head moves, and I think that's going to be fun. So all I know is that when I make a 120 model that is like the Bob Richardson model, it's going to have this red handle. That's all I'm trying to say. Preston, boom. A bunch of flags going on. Have you talked about intense flagging yet? How much flagging goes on set? I don't think we have. It's going to be a hard thing to show other than in 3D, I think. And I think my last bit here that we're going to talk about is that clearly there's some batten strips up here. And batten strips, let's go orange, are these things. So there's these wooden strips with literally just household light bulbs on them. And you know who else does this? Roger Deakins. Makes a big old like chandelier in the middle of the room. It's just a big source that comes down. Tungsten bulbs, Tungsten was the predominant kind of light source when film cameras were being, or film was being engineered. I think daylight works really well too, but they balanced and optimized the film stocks and a lot of the early digital sensors towards tungsten. Now that's a lie. I think the digital sensors are all daylight biased. But so tungsten in general just looks good on skin. For people of my generation and younger / older, they're just used to seeing tungsten light on people. That's what they accept as natural. But these days, if you grow up, kids are going to start to really respond to and understand LED light on skin, fluorescent light. That's what they'll have grown up watching. So when they see tungsten, they're like, that's what grandma looks like. But when you go to like a modern film, it's like, yeah, fluorescent. That's why I see a lot of fluorescent in like Dave Fincher movies, is because it's a little bit more of a modern thing. And you see fluorescent in like stores, grocery stores, that sort of thing. And then as we move into the future, like in 10 years, it's like all the practicals on set will probably be LED if it's a modern movie. But you go back into like a period movie like this, tungsten has a little bit of that fire, because you're essentially running electricity through a tungsten filament, and that tungsten is getting so hot that it's glowing. That's literally what's happening. That's a bit old school at this point. And tungsten's kind of like on the bye-bye, see you later thing as far as the environmental concerns of it. And in Europe, I believe tungsten's actually banned, and in the US, very close to being completely banned. So while you can, shoot with your batten strips. And Shane Hurlbutt, also a big proponent of the batten strip, and he teaches people how to make them at Shane's Inner Circle. So plug for Dave and Shane and Lydia over at the Inner Circle. Go check that out, guys. To wrap this all up, we're going to do a bit of Panavision love. So Panavision dropped this featurette movie thing. I should link to it on basically like what lenses they used and how much work it was and how cool it was. So this is Bob Richardson. And here he is presumably in like a projection room. I think these are what like 70 mil projectors look like. So yeah, it was a lot of work to get these to be shown in the world. I'll talk about that later. So they talk about how Bob Richardson was hanging out at Panavision, because when you're a big DP like that, I think he's like shooting commercials or something like that. It was just checking it out, walking around. And this is the story, is that he found these like random lenses in the back. And this is a Jaeger Junior cart or Jaeger Senior cart, I forget. And he's just walking around, and he was like, what are those weird lenses back there? Is how the story goes. And walks up to them. He's like, I've been a DP for a hot minute. A hot minute. This are his exact words. And he was like, I've never seen these silver funny lenses before. And you know what? I love funny lenses. I want to do something that's unique. And he gets a little bit closer to them. He's like, what is this thing? What is this? What is this crazy looking lens? How have I never seen this before? And we're about to go shoot the Hateful Eight. And it turned out that they were these really unique, only used like 8 times before, something like that, on like movies like Ben-Hur. I'm misquoting probably. Just old school movies that are like, the cinematic benchmarks for like, a lot of cinematographers that are Bob Richardson's age. And they basically asked them, like, can we use these? We want to try them at least. So they went and did these tests with these interesting 70 millimeter crazy anamorphic lenses. And then they went and did tests. This is one of those tests that they screened to the DGA theater. And they were like, wow, these look amazing. I think there's probably some like awesome, film history nerding out that goes on between Quentin and Bob about like, these are the lenses that shot Ben-Hur. Like, oh my God. I think that's exactly how that conversation went. And they've got interesting lens flares. They've got interesting kind of low contrast happening. And they're high resolution. They're high resolution lenses with a little bit of vintage going on that's supposed to project fine to capture 70 mil or 65 mil. I'm not going to get into the exact 65 and the aspect ratios. I don't care, because you know what? I'm never going to shoot with these. I don't need to remember that. I have a lot of things I have to memorize in my life. The exact aspect ratio and projection formats of these lenses, don't care. Here's some more of those lenses. I think they said that they made 15 sets or a lot of sets of these lenses, which is crazy. So they went and re-engineered a bunch. I think they are ramping up, likely to be renting these for things like the old Alexa. I don't know why I'm writing this out. The Alexa 65 and the Red Weapon. I'm not going to write it out. The AK sensors, which are gigantic, and you need essentially medium format cameras. So in my time, having a lens that covered 35 millimeter was like awesome, or full frame. But now Alexa 65 and AK, I think that's actually bigger than full frame in one of the dimensions. I forget which one. So these lenses, they invested in reproducing them, rehousing them so that Bob could use them. But now I think that they're probably going to be out in the world being used for some of the bigger, larger sensor capture systems that are out there. So here is, I forget our engineer's name. He's one of the head engineers at Panavision, was helping them put this together. And this is the first AC from Hateful Eight. So you'll kind of see him around in some of the behind the scenes stills. And here's them kind of talking about the process of finding the lenses, that sort of thing. And here's him putting the lens on. And this is a gigantic film camera. I think the XL2 is probably like half the size of this thing. And this is always interesting. So like Panavision lenses, the rail systems are also a weird distance, but they go on the side, which is cool. Kind of keeps the footprint low down there. And this is what a Panavision film tap looks like. Or I think that's the film tap in the video out. It's an interesting build. And there's a lot of nostalgia for all these type of cameras. And we might be doing Star Wars The Force Awakens on one of the episodes. And you'll see that Panavision actually made them a custom Death Star Black XL2 or Millennium. I forget which one. Panavision camera, which is awesome. Another great thing to put next to your bloody 12x12 is a Panavision camera. That would be great in my house. I would completely make a shrine for that. Here is the first AC kind of like playing around. I don't think he's actually doing anything. He's just kind of doing this for the video. But yeah, just a cool look at this. And if you guys that know Cine Designer who are like, why are the stands orange or red? Look at those stands. So let's look at the last frame here. This is the inner movement of that Panavision. I'm just going to draw right on it. 65 millimeter camera. So I'm going to get this wrong because I'm not like a film AC. It's been a hot minute, but the film comes in like through here and it's like, woo! And then it goes through the gate and then it's like, woo, this is all wrong. Woo! And it goes back into the mag. So this thing's pulling frames, pulling a frame of film. It's pulling this much through every 24 seconds. So it moves quickly. It's engineering. It's like this little clock, and there's something romantic and terrifying about keeping this little machine running. But these days, we don't see much of that. And these look like the modern... Actually, these are probably the lenses. I think those are the medium format ones that are going to start going out with the Alexa 65 and that sort of thing. I know a couple of friends that are already shooting with the 65. So jealous. And I think those are the lenses they're using right now. Pretty sure. So, guys, that sure wraps it up for our look at The Hateful Eight. Really interesting movie, and not to get into the politics of it, but I think it was a cool thing to dive into. You know, I didn't watch Django, but I sure as hell watched Inglourious Basterds, which of course takes place in a very historically volatile time. during World War II with the Holocaust. And Quentin Tarantino, I think, does a good job of bringing up modern conflicts, racial conflicts in America, by placing them in history. So you think you're watching a historical movie, but I feel like there's like this obvious commentary on what's going on in these times now. And this movie, of course, is set in the place of the Civil War, kind of like right after the unconditional surrender, where slaves were set free and the Confederacy was broken up. I'm not a historian, but so to throw these people all in the same room, one is from the North and African American or black, and then there's like a Southern general, who's killed his fair share of Northern black soldiers. It's there's a lot of like racial tension that's obviously in this, and I think that overall, like the human message is the question that they talk about is like, does war justify murder? And they're all like kind of judging each other. Like, how much murder did you do? We're like, well, that's less than I did. I don't murder that much. I only murder a little bit. But when the European comes in and kind of looks at it from like an unbiased perspective, he's like, your line between justice and murder is really thin. It's just like this legal system that you have, which back then was probably even less, made even a little bit less sense than it does now. So I think that movie, for that context alone, was really amazing. I enjoyed it. I know some people who probably are not into like the heavy dialogue of Quentin Tarantino movies may have been into it, or who get like cabin fever by shooting a movie by watching a movie that's in a cabin in the snow the whole time. But I thought it was really interesting. I thought that they did really, really interesting narrative portions, or like the way that he broke up the segments and did the flashback and how the cinematography worked. I was into it. And I'm probably into it because I like Quentin Tarantino movies. Like I said, I think my generation has been extremely influenced by both his work and Bob's work together. And I hope that you guys enjoyed looking at some of the behind the scenes, a little bit of the color correction, a little bit of like the Panavision nostalgia that's going on here. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I just want to end it by saying that Cinedesigner came out last Monday. It's done really well. We've got a really cool group of first people using it. And if you're interested in learning more about Cinedesigner, specifically like how do you actually do it, I actually spent the entire week, almost every single day, recording like 5 videos a day. And I made a 20-part video course that's free at it's going to be learncinedesign.com, or you can just go to the Cinematography Database website and go to the little link that says Learn Cinedesign. There are 20 videos that will take you from knowing nothing about 3D to using it to plan shoots, honestly, even up to this scale. And I'm going to be building the exact cranes that he uses, because a lot of my European friends use the GFM cranes. And I'm going to be building the Roger Deakins crane and remote head, the power pod, the aero crane. And I already have a bunch of cranes in there. We're going to add more, and we're going to be able to play around. And I'm eventually going to be using those things to teach more on the Cinematography Database show. So that's it. Head to learncinedesign.com. Hopefully that domain's up by the time this goes out. It may not be. If it's not up, just go to the cinematographydb.com. Thanks so much for watching. I forgot to answer a question. Oh. Actually, I'm probably going to do an episode where all I do is answer questions. We've got about I think 5 to 10 pretty cool questions that I can just bang out the answers to in a somewhat helpful presentation. So maybe we'll do that in one of the episodes, like a mini episode in between the Mondays. The show comes out on Monday. Maybe we'll put it out on Friday or something like that. So thank you again for watching. I'll check you guys later. Bye.